Big companies think they're investing to make their workplaces inclusive. Research shows their employees don't think it's enough. We're going to break down 5 reasons why. I'm Dr. Jonathan. I work with organizations to make them inclusive, and I'm on a mission to help 1 million people like you to make your workplace inclusive. Get your pen and paper ready, because we're talking about 5 ways large companies are failing their employees in their inclusion efforts. Before we do that, I want to use this as an opportunity to share some insights about why you shouldn't just take research on face value because someone says so. And that includes me. But that's why we always give you the show notes so you can make your own mind up. Okay, so with that in mind, all of this is taken from a recent Harvard Business Review article called Research, where employees think companies' DEIB efforts are failing. And here's a background that I lifted from the summary in the article, and this is a quote. 2 new surveys from Gallup, each conducted in the spring of 2022, reveal stark differences in how well employees and HR leaders say their organizations are doing when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. While 84% of CHROs say their organizations are increasing investment in DEIB, only 31% of employees say their organization is committed to improving racial justice or equity in their workplace. To make progress, leaders must understand employees' core DEIB needs. Okay, so let's assume that CHRO means Chief Human Resources Officer, the most senior HR person in an organization. Let's assume that DEIB means diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Now let's consider the sample. This is a study of 122 CHROs of large companies. Now, I don't know what large means, but I'm guessing these are some of the largest companies in the world. To be clear, I don't know that. I don't know if this means the world, North America, Europe, I don't know. And that's because they didn't say. What we do know is that what we're about to discuss are big company problems, but they're presented as if they are problems for all organizations. And that's okay, that's what a lot of researchers do. But I don't think this is a random sample, so I don't think this applies to everyone. And you need to understand that before we go any further, because it's not what it's presented to be. Next, let's consider the statement itself. The central argument here is what? It's that leaders think one thing and employees think another. Now, I don't think that's an insight. An insight would tell us more about the problem. But I want you to reconsider how the problem is phrased. The article is talking about employees' needs, but when it's talking about the CHROs, it's talking about their increasing investment. Now, once again, it's not entirely clear what investment means. But they did give clues. They talked about employee resource groups, they talked about analytics teams, they talked about listening posts, they talked about DEIB training for managers, they talked about unconscious bias training, they talked about hiring and promotion, they talked about mentoring and sponsorship programs. They talked about a lot of things in quite ambiguous terms, but one thing that wasn't ambiguous to me, and you may have already noticed this, is that these are all inputs. The article described them as investments. What they didn't describe was how effective or useful they were. To make it simpler, it doesn't tell me the outputs of their efforts. This is an article that's comparing 2 different things, and I want you to know this because most people are going to miss this. It's comparing what the senior HR leaders are putting in with what the employees are getting out. I think it would have been more useful to ask, what results are the CHROs observing? And what results are the employees observing? And then having a conversation about what they are, comparing and contrasting. And then we can have a conversation about different perceptions. I read the article and there wasn't much information about outputs from the perspective of the leaders. Sometimes they spoke about what they believe, but for me, I'm less interested in what they believe. I'm interested in what they know. The bulk of the article was a list. It was 10 employee DEIB needs that aren't being met. Not only am I not going to cover each of these, I'm not even going to list each of these because I don't think it's that useful. I'll provide a link in the show notes, but discussing each and every one of these, I don't think is the best use of our time. For example, here's 2. Employees want equal opportunities for advancement. Employees want managers to recognize their strengths. These feel like generic statements that anyone could say. And that's fine, but the survey didn't give us any insights into how, why, or what to do with this from an inclusion perspective. So we're going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to pick 5 points that I thought were interesting or relevant and probably not in the way that the author intended. So the first one is, employers say they're making DEIB changes, but employees don't see meaningful progress. So what does that mean? Let me give you a quick quote. In our survey, 97% of HR leaders say their organization has made changes that improve DEI. Unfortunately, just 37% of employees strongly agree that their workplace has made changes to improve DEI. Even more troubling, an additional 34% of employees say they don't know whether their leaders are making changes related to DEI. For me, we need a lot more information for that to make any sense, but let's pick a few things. 97% of HR leaders say their organization has made changes that improve DEI. Improved DEI. There's nothing in the article to suggest that 97% of leaders could prove that they'd improved DEI. This is where my experience kicks in. I find that CHROs think that doing something is considered to be improving DEI. And in some cases, it is, especially if the bar is low, especially if you're at the beginning of your inclusion journey. So for some people, that could be a generic diversity statement. That could be the top team saying they're executive sponsors now. That could be sponsoring a diversity-related event. That could be just getting a keynote speaker. It could be a lot of things that don't necessarily help. Now, suppose you accept that. Suppose you accept that what I said is true. That might explain why 34% of employees said that they don't know whether their leaders are making changes related to DEI. Second is employees still report discrimination at work. I thought that they were going to say something completely different to what they actually said. I was going to be more sympathetic with the CHROs. I thought the article was going to say that they've made changes to the organization, but employees still report discrimination at work. And I would have been a lot more sympathetic because in less than 12 months, you might not see that change. Now, some of you will disagree, but that's not the point the article made at all. It said something completely different. And this is a quote. While no one is immune, leaders are much less likely than employees to experience discrimination. Nearly 2 in 10, 16%, employees have experienced discrimination in the past 12 months, while just 5% of HR leaders say the same. I felt that missed the whole point. I agree, leaders are much less likely than employees to experience discrimination. But why are we comparing the employees' experience of discrimination with HR leaders' experience of discrimination? I thought they would compare employees' experience of discrimination this year with employees' experience of discrimination last year. Asking HR leaders if they experienced discrimination themselves and comparing that to employees' experience of discrimination, that doesn't tell us much about the impact of all these DEIB interventions. I thought that was completely misleading. The third thing is employees aren't confident that their companies will do the right thing. And here's another quote. There's a dramatic divide between leaders and employees when it comes to their confidence that the company will do the ethical thing. Most leaders, 86%, are confident the company will do the right thing if someone raised a concern about ethics or integrity. But only 35% of employees feel the same. Now for me, this speaks to a larger issue of culture and integrity. My experience is the only reason that people don't believe a company will do the right thing is if the company doesn't have a track record of doing the right thing. They've got a track record of not doing the right thing. And to me, this is an issue of your reputation that you have with your employees. Now, regardless of what the leaders think, employees see the business practices. They see the ethics. They see how people are actually treated on a day-to-day basis. And this has an impact on the diversity promise. If organizations can't be trusted to deliver on their promises, they certainly can't be trusted to deliver on their diversity promises. The fourth thing is employees want to feel comfortable being their authentic selves at work. I thought this was interesting and I thought this was a positive result. And here's a quote. A culture of belonging is one where everyone feels accepted for who they are. This is an area of strength for many workplaces. 41% of employees feel comfortable being themselves at work. However, only 27% of HR leaders believe that employees at their organization feel comfortable being themselves at work. So in this case, the employees were more confident than the HR leaders. I'm glad they said bring your authentic self and they didn't say bring your whole self. As a regular member of our audience, you already know that I don't think we should bring our whole selves to work. And they didn't say that here. But I did want to understand those numbers a bit more. The useful results can get lost in the noise. Here's a crude example, and I'm really oversimplifying to make a point. We need to know more about the employees for that information to be useful. We know these are large companies. Now, this isn't true, but I'm oversimplifying. But let's suppose 90% are men, suppose 90% are white, suppose 90% are cisgender, suppose 90% have no disabilities. I'm exaggerating to make a point. Suppose that was true. If 41% of employees feel comfortable being themselves at work, what does that mean? It still means that most people don't. It also means we don't know much about those people. Even in our fictional company, which has 90% of people who are white cisgender men with no disabilities, this means that a great deal of them don't feel comfortable being themselves at work. And we don't know why. And that's the majority. We definitely don't know about everyone else or why. I'm really oversimplifying to make the point that we just need more information. And the other thing that's worth noting, it said that 27% of HR leaders believe employees at their organizations feel comfortable being themselves at work. Now they said believe. Now believe based on what? Did I have any data? Because if they had data, then it's not their belief, it's an observation. It's something that they think based on information they've got. So for me, this didn't really tell us that much. The fifth and final thing was that employees want their managers to be comfortable discussing DEIB. They should have made the whole article about this. And let me explain why. And this is a quote. Employees and managers agree that there's room for improvement when it comes to managers' confidence in discussing DEI. Only 39% of employees said that their manager had discussed DEIB topics with them in the last 12 months. This aligns with the 41% of managers who reported that they were prepared for these conversations. However, only 8% of HR leaders said they felt their managers were prepared for these conversations. So once again, the employees are more confident than the HR leaders, but this is where it got really interesting. Gallup data shows that managers are more than twice as likely to strongly agree that they're prepared to have DEIB conversations if they've attended a listening session, town hall, or company-wide meeting on the topic in the past 12 months. For me, this was the most insightful thing in the whole article. As I said, they should have made the whole article about this. The reason I like this is that it potentially challenges my experience, but it also supports my experience. Now, why is that? They're saying that managers are twice as likely to think that they're prepared for conversations about this stuff if they've attended some kind of an event in the past 12 months. Imagine if that can also apply to panel events. I think most of the panel events that organizations host are a waste of time. Imagine if this data is saying that attending a panel event means that people are prepared to have DEIB conversations. That would be really useful for me. That would be really useful for you. I don't hate generic panel events. I hate generic things that waste your time. Now, please understand, if the evidence suggests I should, I will support them. We don't know, but it's possible that's the case here. But there's also another way to think about this. I always tell you to invest in things that you can do little but often. That's why I always think that you should start a book club. That's why I think that you should do a lunch and learn using episodes of this podcast as a point of discussion. These things don't cost you a lot, but imagine if these things make it easier for managers to discuss what the article calls DEIB issues. Would that be worth something to you? Would that be worth something to your organization? Make sure you check out the article for yourself because I want you to make your own mind up. But for me, that was the most important part of the article. That's the thing that everybody could pick up in some way, shape, or form and make something of it. Now, I want to be really clear. What we've discussed here is very different from the tone of the article. One thing that we definitely agree on, and this is a quote, even leaders who genuinely care about DEIB can waste countless resources and squander opportunities for lasting change. And that's why I'm here to support you. That's why we're here. We're a resource that can create opportunities for lasting change, and I want you to use it. So let's wrap this up. What are the key messages here? 1. Don't just believe article headlines because it's in a high-status publication. 2. Don't buy into generic research findings. And 3. Make sure you're comparing like for like. So what do you think? Do you think starting a book club would make it easier for people to have conversations about inclusion? Get in touch or leave a message. I would love to hear from you. If you've learned something from today's show, then give us a 5-star review and a comment wherever you're listening to the podcast. It helps other people like you to find the show. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.